So there's this great little song that Brian Wilson wrote back in the day. It has a really simple song form with an immaculate chord progression and orchestration. This lesson is about Caroline No off the landmark Beach Boys album Pet Sounds. Stay tuned while I examine the chord structure and song form, and to a lesser degree the orchestration, production, and some of the lyrical themes. I'm not going to do a lengthy intro with full background and context like I've done in some videos, and some of you said maybe they're too long, and maybe you're right. I'm listening. Let me just preface this song like this. You've heard me talk about Brian Wilson's chord mastery on Pet Sounds and Smile, with all of the alternate bass notes and chord extensions that make these novel and ambiguous chord combinations. You know, when you take a G major chord and you add the 6 to it, so that's like a G6 chord, you essentially have major and minor. That's why I call them, androgynous chords or ambiguous chords. Because you have major there, but if I add that E, you actually have E minor. Put them both together, you get a G6, you have major and minor. So if you do a G6 and then put an alternate bass note in, it gets pretty wild. So if you do chords like that, what ends up happening for the listener, and I've talked about this before, is you don't have much of a sense of major, minor. Some music is really obvious. That's major, and then minor. Very obvious, but when you do stuff like this, the listener really doesn't know where we are, and that's what's so great about Pet Sounds is there's this sort of calming harmonic structure that you don't understand, but it's just there. As far as Pet Sounds goes, this has got to be one of the simplest song forms there is. It just does a little percussion intro and then 2 verses, 1 chorus, another verse with one extra bar in there, and then the outro, which is the same as the verse, and repeat to fade. Arrangement-wise, it has to be the simplest song on there. If you don't agree, leave a comment below, tell me which one is. Brian decided not to use a regular drum beat. There's just some percussion, like a tambourine, a Sparkletts water bottle through the echo chamber, and I think a wood block. And then there's this wild instrumentation that sounds like this Baroque psychedelic vibe. It has harpsichord, there's multiple flutes, including bass flutes, alto flutes, multiple basses like stand-up and picked bass, a 12-string guitar, vibraphone, acoustic guitar, tenor sax, and there might be a couple more things in there, I'm not sure, but that's the basic vibe. And since there's no actual drum beat and there's a liberal use of that echo chamber, it really has this sort of fluid sound. It just sort of has this lush, calming orchestration and production that's really beautiful. It's softer than some of the other songs on Pet Sounds. On the surface, the theme and lyrics, which we'll get into later, invoke a sense of lamenting for the loss of innocence and a certain hardening of the character as the young female becomes an adult. This loss of innocence theme was central to Pet Sounds, and in fact, I think on many of Brian's songs before Pet Sounds, he used to always have this innocent vibe. I mean, Brian is such an angelic character. He has an angelic voice, and he exudes this innocence that's not typically found in rock stars. I mean, do we even think of Brian Wilson as a rock star? He was a rock star, but he just has this little cherubic vibe that is what I love about him. It's one of the main things I love about him, but you don't usually find that in your Mick Jaggers and Robert Plants and, these sexy characters. Brian is not a sexy character. He's like a little guiding angel. So let's go ahead and dive right into the chord analysis. So it starts off with some interesting sounding percussion. I think a tambourine and a Sparkletts water bottle. It starts on a pickup note, actually, although it's hard to tell, when a song just starts with a rhythm. Have you ever tried to count the beginning of Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll? Where does it start? This is the same thing. It doesn't start on da-da. It starts on, it's a pickup note. Da, 1, 2. Da, 1, 2. Do, then we start right there. So the first 2 chords we can see are G6. Remember I talked about these ambiguous chords? Then G6, 9. It just adds a 9 right there. To D minor over C. So what key are we in? You know, I know the whole song, so sometimes you have to go to the chorus to figure out what key you're in. And if you zoom ahead to the chorus here, just a little cheat sheet, we see 2, 5, 1 in C. So maybe we're in C. We could have also maybe thought of ourselves in G, but then instead of a D7, it goes to D minor, so that kind of counts out G major. So this pretty much is in C, so let's go with that. We start on the 5, and remember 5 is usually dominant, like a G7, and here's the root, C. So Brian is a master of you have no clue what key you're in by listening to my chords. It's so unbelievable to listen to. So what we have there is 5, but it's obscured. Since it's not a dominant chord, it's a 6 chord and a 6/9 chord. And then it goes to a 2 chord, which is D minor. But Brian's done this before on wind chimes, that over a minor chord over it's 7. So I don't call that a D minor 7, even though minor 7 is in the bass, because then the person playing the chords or the comper might add a C up top. Then we'd have too many C's. I want just a D up top. So that's why I call it D minor over C. So that really confuses the ear too, because it's not like we're going G to D minor like this. We're going G to D minor like this, with that really cool bass note. That's C. Yeah, so just meditate on that chord progression for a minute. Pause and play it. G6, G6/9 to D minor over C. So what we have there is a 5/2 in C. Pretty simple, but when you just play it, you really don't get that sense of 5/2 that you would get from a G7 to a D minor. So you can see we start after that percussion intro with a verse, actually 2 verses, because you can see that repeat. So it does this chord progression that we've been talking about here, the 5/2 in C, twice. Where did your longing go? Where is the girl I used to know? What made her lose that happy glow? Oh, Caroline, oh.
I hate having to advertise to you, so let me make this quick. I could really use your help to grow this channel. Between my full-time job as an ER nurse and being a husband and father of 2 kids, it is very hard for me to find the time to make content for this channel. Many of my videos take 10 or 20 hours to create. For those of you who are really getting a lot out of my lessons, here is how you can help me out. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and that the notification bell is set to all notifications for my channel. I think only 10% of you have that clicked now. You can watch more of my videos by browsing through the playlist section of my channel to find the videos that most interest you. But the very best way you can help me is to subscribe to my Patreon music school called High Castle Conservatory. YouTube pays me about 1 cent per view, but on Patreon you can decide to give me $3.50 a month, or $7, or $15, or more, whatever you feel you're getting out of my lessons. The more support that I get on Patreon, the more time I have to devote to making unique music education content for you. At this point, I have not abbreviated my videos here on YouTube or put my full videos behind a paywall, and by joining my Patreon, you help me in the most direct way possible. If you have found yourself really enjoying my lessons, then please come join High Castle Conservatory on Patreon. Lastly, please consider buying my original music projects I.S.S. and High Castle Orchestra on Bandcamp. You can find the details and links in the description below. Now let's get back to that lesson.
So we have 2 verses in a row that start with that chord progression we've just been going over, doing it twice, starting to do it a 3rd time, but then it goes into a 2/5 in the key of 4. Remember, we're in C, and 4 is F. So if it does that G minor to C9 sus4 right there, I'm not going to call it a key change really, because what it's doing is a 2/5 in 4, which is pretty much related to this key. So You could call that a 5 to 1 dominant to 4, but you could also call it a 2-5 of 4, which is what I like to think of it as. So it does 2 verses in a row, and after it does the G6 to G6-9 to D minor over C 2 times, it does G6 to G6-9, and instead of going to D minor over C, it goes to G minor, not even a minor 7 on there, to C9 sus4, F major 7 over C, F major 9. So that's 4 of C. Then let's repeat back to G6. That look away. I remember how you used to say you'd never change, but that's not true. Oh, Caroline, you. Then it goes to a chorus. Break my heart, I want to go cry. It's so sad to watch a sweet thing die. Oh, Caroline. So yeah, real simple form. We're in the key of C, but very ambiguously with these chords, like we've gone over. And really, let's take a look at that bass line, G to C, G to C. Let's see if that sounds familiar. Only like every freaking song ever. So the fact that that's the bass line underneath of this really almost makes the ear want to think that's what's going on, but it's really not. So anyway, the verses end up on the 4 chord, remember, because it did a 2-5, and that 5 is a little bit altered, right? It has a suspended 4. You could also call that B flat over C if you wanted to, but I like to express that was a 2-5, so I made it a dominant. And goes to F major 7 over C, so it kind of holds that in suspension, then resolves that. But we're not resolved in the key because we're on 4, right? And then it just goes back to the second verse. How you used to say you'd never. Here's that 2-5 in the key of 4. But that's not true. Oh, Caroline, you. And it goes to the chorus. 2-5 in C. 2-5-1 in C. Break my heart, I want to go. It's so sad to watch a sweet thing die. Oh, Caroline. Back to the third verse. Could I ever find... Anyway, chorus is beautiful. It's a 2-5-1 in C major, so that's the key we're in. And remember, we've avoided C entirely. There's been no C major up until there. So that's the first time we've actually gone home, is that chorus. Break my heart, I want for the first time we're coming home. There we are. Most songs don't wait that long to tell you what key they're in. So immediately after it goes 2-5-1 in C, it then goes to the 7 to the 3 dominant, which resolves to 6. But there's a better name for that, and that's 2-5 of 6. And since 6 is minor, that means it's going to be a 2-half diminished to a dominant chord to A minor. So you can see right there that I named it two different things. You could call it 7 half diminished to 3 dominant to 6, or 2-5 of 6, which is what I like to think of it as. So we have 2-5-1 in C major. Break. Now 2-5-1 in the relative minor, which is A minor. So you have B half diminished to E7 to A minor. Then he pulls that trick, the flat 6 major. I've talked about this in my Vertigo video. I also have an entire video on the magic of flat 6. Basically, if you're in the key of C, flat 6, which is not in the key, has a huge connection to it because they share C in common. Flat 6, which is A flat major, has C as its major third. So that's the reason that that chord works. So once again in the chorus, we've got 2-5-1, then 2-5 of the relative minor, which is A minor. And then straight to that flat 6 major, but make it ambiguous with a 6. And that falls right back into that G6. It's nice leading, actually, nice voice leading. All pretty simple. I don't really think of any of that as changing keys. We just have basically some secondary 2-5s. So after the chorus, we just go back to another verse. The only thing different is we add this extra bar toward the end of the phrase, and it sounds like it kind of resolves before it goes into the outro, which is the same music as the verse with just some vibraphones and flutes and stuff playing. All right, let's play one more time and just talk through it. No. 5 to 2 in C. 5 to 2 in C. It's amazing. Again, 5 to 2 in C. Now a 2-5-1 in the 4 of C, which is F. So a 2-5-1 in F would be G minor, C7. Keep the bass note so it's suspended, then resolve to F major 9. That's still just 4 of C. One more time, we take the repeat. 5, but an ambiguous 5. Then 2, and also an ambiguous 2. Because of those bass notes and extensions, right? Here comes that 2-5 of 4. Then resolve finally to F major 9, which is 4. Now for the chorus, we do a 2-5-1 in C. Now a 2-5-1 in the relative minor. It's so sad to watch the sweet thing die. And that's a brilliant flat 6 major, which is related to the key of C because they share the C in common. But whenever you do that flat 6, I have whole videos about this, you should go watch them. One way to add even more obscurity and ambiguity is to not just do a major, is to add a 6 like he did. You can even leave out the 5 and make it like an F minor over A flat. Same effect, listen. It's okay. I do lots of editing anyway. One more thing of note on that initial chord progression, the 5 to 2 with the extensions and alternate bass notes, is the bass line does something like just a little run. Brian's always having these playful little runs with those multiple basses. Sounds really, really nice. And on this one, you definitely hear a stand-up bass and a real distinct picked bass, or it could even be a baritone guitar. I'm not sure what it is. Oh, but at the end of the third verse there, after that 2-5, it does it a little bit different. It adds an extra bar. Bring them back once they had gone. just as an outro. I love that D minor over C. It's such an underused... There's regular D minor, and we're so used to hearing that, but... That's the whole chord structure. Another great lesson from Brian in changing up the key center, the feeling of the key center, so that we're not always hitting the one chord. You know, God only knows he never gets to the one, like an E major over E. He does an E over B at one point. In this song, we do get to the one in that chorus, but that's really the only time it goes to just C. Everything else, you know, you would have a real hard time telling what key you're in. Because there's no drum beat in this song, there's this sort of open, lush orchestration, liberal use of reverb. It just sounds really nice. Musically, it is interesting in the chords that it's using, obviously, that I've gone over, and the unusual combination of instruments, which is typical of every song on Pet Sounds. There's a really nice sort of psychedelic Baroque production, that harpsichord, vibraphone, there's flute, 2 bass flutes, 2 alto flutes. There's stand-up bass, Carol Kay on the Dan Electro bass. I think it's a 6-string bass. There's this unique small percussion ensemble with a big Sparklets water bottle going through a bunch of reverb, and a wood block and a tambourine. And there's even a spot toward the climax where I think they have Hal Blaine overdubbing a drum fill. There's 12-string guitar, acoustic guitar, tenor sax, and I think maybe more. And it's one of the only songs where it's just Brian singing. There's no Beach Boy background vocals. Maybe that's why they released it as a Brian Wilson solo project, but it was also on Pet Sounds. Yeah, it was released as Brian's first solo record in March of 1966. 2 months later, it was put as the closing track on Pet Sounds. Brian wrote it with the Pet Sounds collaborator lyricist Tony Asher, and the lyrics describe a disillusioned man who reflects on his former love interest and the loss of innocence. The words were inspired by a past girlfriend named Carol. He initially conceived the title Carol, I Know, but Brian heard it as Caroline No. At least that's how the story goes. There's some dispute about that. Asher said the song came out of Brian Wilson's disenchantment with his music career and with sweet little girls who grow up into bitchy, hardened adults. Ooh. 2004, it was ranked the number 214th song of all time in the Rolling Stone list. Wilson said the lyrics are a real tearjerker, like the song Hey Girl by Freddie Scott. It was a 1963 record. Musicologist Philip Lambert identified Caroline No as a continuation of the themes previously established in Wilson's You Still Believe in Me and The Little Girl I Once Knew. In his description, the protagonist is thoroughly heartbroken and disillusioned and longs for a return to the youthful innocence, not the complexity of adulthood. Granada offered that the ruminating tune represented the antithesis of most Beach Boy hits. That's pretty interesting. It's kind of true, huh? This really doesn't sound very Beach Boys. It sounds like Brian. And there's some talk that it was about Brian's wife at the time, Marilyn, who had cut her hair, and she thought the song was about her, and Brian said that that was definitely part of the influence as well.
Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking an interest in my channel. Please help me reach a larger audience by hitting subscribe below and ringing the notification bell. Check out my video playlist page to find the categories that most interest you. Leave me a super thanks here on YouTube, and even better, come join my Patreon. Please consider buying music for my original projects I.S.S. and High Castle Teleorchestra. Also, don't forget to sign up for my email list on the front page of timsmolens.com. You can find information about all of those things in the description below. Thanks again.